be the last video I do on Venezuela, at least for a while, unless something takes place and something happens. But I'm doing this video on Venezuela because I realize that I may be assuming that somebody is watching this video and has a similar opinion to me. I'm going to assume for the moment that that's not the case. I've seen people look at this and say, well, I mean, if Maduro is that bad, maybe we should instigate ourselves into that country. I've seen people fall into this logic of, if X, then we should do Y. As if the very fact that something is taking place automatically demands that the United States takes action. Meaning, even if Assad did gas his people, it is not for us to act. It is not even legal for us to act. I guess I'm trying to make that point. I'm trying to disassociate the fact that something happens with an automatic response, be it militarily or some way of trying to of inflict our will in various situations. Because I would point to you that that has not turned out well. If the question is boiling down to what is in the best interest of Venezuela, I would put it this way. So, and the reason I'm asking this question, Mike Pompeo has come out expressing support for the Venezuelan people. And not just Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump and Mike Pence. So Mike Pence, where is it? Damn. Here we are.
Pence.
Yeah, here we are. All right. So this is Mike Pence. Mike Pence is going to express support for the Venezuelan people because Mike Pence cares so much about the Venezuelans, and Donald Trump also cares so much for the Venezuelans, and John Bolton weeps at night for the plight of the Venezuelan people. All of these neocons care so much for the Venezuelans. Let's take a look at Mike Pence dredge up as much emotion as he could to show how much concern he has for the Venezuelan population.
The Vice President of the United States. And on behalf of President Donald Trump and all the American people, let me express the unwavering support of the United States as you, the people of Venezuela, raise your voices in a call for freedom. Nicolas Maduro is a dictator with no legitimate claim to power. He's never won the presidency in a free and fair election, and he's maintained his grip of power by imprisoning anyone who dares to oppose him. The United States joins with all freedom-loving nations in recognizing the National Assembly as the last vestige of democracy in your country, for it's the only body elected by you, the people. As such, the United States supports the courageous decision by Juan Guaidó, the President of your National Assembly, to assert that body's constitutional powers, declare Maduro a usurper, and call for the establishment of a transitional government.
Essentially a coup. We want you to take Maduro out of that office. What he's talking about, the United States was essentially going back all the way to 2017 and even probably before. I mean, there was a coup back in 2002. But Chavez was able to come back into power. But in this case, there's media reports going back to 2017 where the United States was funding opposition groups within the country itself, meaning us putting resources, and some may say weapons, into the country itself in order to create chaos in that country. Add on to that economic sanctions where they can't get their hands on certain goods and items. Whatever you want to think of Maduro, and whatever you want to say, you know, he mismanaged or whatever else, fair enough, but let's be honest and clear that the sanctions and the activities that we've been taking have wreaked havoc within the country itself. And again, it's dual. It's wreaking havoc from a political standpoint with funding opposition groups in the country, while simultaneously also attacking it from an economic standpoint in order to give almost like a justification for the political chaos. So there's that. Maduro gave a response, not necessarily specifically to this, but this is going towards the American public. And he asks a question in this that starts off, which is kind of where I got this video from. Take a look at this.
En su prepotencia imperial, ¿podemos nosotros creer que el secretario de Estado Mike Pompeo tiene buenos intereses y buenos deseos para que Venezuela prospere?
Right there. Can we believe that Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, has the best interest for Venezuelan to be prosperous? That is what it boils down to, right? I mean, at the end of the day, to answer this question, I would say look back at the track record of the United States. And I've supported this. And again, this video is made from the perspective of people who are looking at this like, not necessarily knowing the history of this stuff. We've supported one bloody coup after the next throughout South America, whether it's Brazil or Chile, Guatemala, where the CIA, Bolivia, where the CIA instigated itself into the various countries, either putting propaganda through the countries, whether supporting weapons and munitions into those countries, whether it's giving oil, gas, in some cases, blunt cash, in other cases, military support, to take down the elected governments in those countries. Some of those governments were more like FDR governments, where they were trying to get reforms. And that reform was looked at as these guys are communists, and all of the weight of the United States went down on putting in right-wing governments, vicious, brutal, dictatorial, right-wing governments that we were perfectly okay with. We had no issue with these governments at all. In fact, we love these governments because these governments will play ball. Democracy is messy. If you have a democratic process, the democratic process may tell you to kick rocks. Whereas this dictator, who you are just giving a blunt sum of cash to, and that takes that blunt sum of cash in order to pacify the population and keep them in a certain degree of servitude and bondage, that works well. That works well. The same strategy was applied in the Middle East, mind you. But specifically to South America, bloody coups and violent dictators, and we were okay with all of them. Why this guy? Why is this particular quote-unquote dictator, as they call him, that just got elected? Why is this dictator the guy who's so problematic to the standpoint of the United States? Why does it bother all of these neocons so much? John Bolton, who weeps at night for the Venezuelan people, was perfectly okay with 1 million people being wiped off the face of the earth, and still to this day doesn't consider the Iraq War a mistake, and is still trying to go further into Iran, and potentially, well, at some point he wanted North Korea. But these neocons care so much. I guess I'm making the point to you that these neocons don't care at all. Fact of the matter is, it's the same playbook. One guy would play ball, the other guy wouldn't. Juan Guaido is willing to play ball, which is why they're perfectly okay with him being in the position from the standpoint of a coup, just like they were perfectly okay with other right-wingers in the various governments that we've overthrown to be in those positions. Same playbook. It hasn't changed. If we're asking the question of who has the best interests of the Venezuelans at heart, whatever you want to think of Maduro, certainly it's not the United States to choose who's the leader of that particular country. And that is exactly what we are trying to do. Before you buy too much into this message of, that these guys care so much, look at this. This is a leaked Tillerson memo. This is when Tillerson was Secretary of State. And somebody felt the need to send Tillerson a memo to explain to him how the United States actually operates. This was leaked. So this wasn't something that, this was them being honest with one another, not the nonsense and propaganda that they tell each other in media or when they're talking to you. The May 17th memo reads like a crash course for the businessman turned diplomat, and its conclusion offers a starkly realistic vision that the United States should use human rights as a club against its adversaries like Iran, China, and North Korea, while giving a pass to repressive allies like the Philippines, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Because even if you want to say, well, yeah, that was back in the past when the United States had that thing with dictators, we're okay with these governments in Egypt. We're okay with Saudi Arabia. We're okay with the apartheid state in Israel. And before you said, well, yeah, but that's a democratic government. Yeah, but they're occupying somebody else's territory and have made themselves an apartheid state. We're okay with these governments being dictators. The issue is whether or not they're going to support our interests. That's all that matters. There is no human rights concern in the way that the United States operates. It operates purely at the behest of itself. Are we going to have some advantage in what we're doing? Or is there a certain ideological standpoint from which we want to have a certain geopolitical influence? Just saying. Allies should be treated differently and better than adversaries. Otherwise, we end up with more adversaries and fewer allies, argued the memo written by Tillerson's influential policy aide, Brian Hook. But that's true. Think back over the world. Think back in our actions in the various places. Ignore for the moment the propaganda that the media puts out and think in the terms of, realistically, how have we behaved in the various countries around the globe? Is it oil? Is it some kind of mineral interest? Is it some kind of corporate interest that want to get their hands on a particular product? Our policies have fundamentally not changed. And we've used the CIA to various effects throughout our time. The wild and interesting part about this, though, is this is known. This is a slow-moving, overt coup that, to anybody that's looking at this, is pretty clear on what is taking place. The question here is, do you honestly believe that John Bolton, Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and Pompeo, all of these other neocons that are perfectly okay with bombing and killing and maiming large numbers of people, that are perfectly okay with giving themselves massive tax cuts while other people in the country either starve or run on this kind of hamster wheel, who are perfectly willing to get rid of people's health care, the tepid health care that we do have in this country. I guess I'm making a point to you that, do you honestly believe that these neocons that are typically completely unempathetic care about the interests of the Venezuelan people? Or is this memo correct? And is the way that the United States operates in the world indicative of this memo? I would put to you that this memo is right. They don't care about the Venezuelan people. One guy is willing to play ball, the other guy is not. We're okay with dictators when they're willing to suit our interests. This is purely a naked grab to get one person out of power and put somebody else in. It is a coup. Do you want your country, should your country, be involved in fomenting these type of coups? For fuck's sake, your government is not even open. You still have nearly 1 million people who aren't getting a paycheck. And yet and still, they're doing shit like this. There was somebody, I'm not going to keep this one long because there's not a lot of meat on this. I just thought this was, insane. Check my post before this on Venezuela, Ray Foley. Let's see. What did you say, Ray? Ray Foley. Ray, I don't see a post from you, dude. Ray, I might need you to repeat, because I can't take all data cycle through. Yeah, Ray, I don't see it, dog. I need you to repeat it. Clyde Illusion, Jamal, read Ray's post. He sent you money. I read Ray's post. Check my post before this on Venezuela, but I don't see your posts. Unless you're fucking with me, you never made one. You have me searching for something that doesn't exist. Waiting for the trains that just never come. Let's see. I don't see a dude. Ray, you're killing me, dog. Ray, I think you're fucking with me. I don't see a post from you. Oh, there it is. Going downtown Chicago tonight for emergency protests on behalf of Maduro support. 190 North State in front of ABC building, 6 to 7 Central Time. Come anyone that can. I read that again. Going downtown Chicago for emergency protests on behalf of Maduro support. Here's the thing. It's not even necessary to support Maduro. It's just, do you want your government involved in fomenting coups in this way? And let's be very clear. If the military fractures, you're looking at a civil war. You have two people who are claiming support for the presidency, two sovereigns. Which one is going to be sovereign? Well, Maduro has support of the military, but the United States is threatening that if any harm comes to the diplomats, even though they told the diplomats to get out the country, that there will be consequences. Like, this is escalating rapidly. The support in this doesn't necessarily have to be directly for Maduro. It doesn't have to be this one or the other. It can really boil down to, I don't want my government involved in these type of grisly, gross affairs where we are conquering and taking over other countries. Mind you, screaming Russia and Trump conquered our democracy in some way. Like, I just find it amazing. Going downtown Chicago tonight for emergency protests on behalf of Maduro support. 190 North State in front of ABC building, 6 to 7 Central Time. Come anyone that can. Let's see. Here's another one. Yeah, Tabitha, you're not alone. His voice creeps me out too. It's his political voice. He tries to make it sound that way. You know, the wild part about this is Maduro goes on saying how much he loves America or the American people and so forth. I identify with this. I've said the same thing about Israel. Like, I don't like the government itself, but I've never had issue with Israelis and interaction with them. I thought all of them, for the most part, were cool people. It's the politics that becomes somewhat of a problem in the relationship or in any kind of conversation where that comes up. Because at that point, the politics creates, you become somewhat adversaries in that case. But I've said that before, it's like, I disagree with the government, but the people, I don't hold it against people, that type of stuff. Maduro is kind of making that argument here, saying, look, the American public, the United States, he even brings up Code Pink and the people who are organizing on behalf of preventing intervention into Venezuela. So he brings it up in this link. All right. I'm not going to keep this one. Like I said, I wanted this one to be relatively short. 20 minutes is longer than I wanted to keep it, so I'm just going to go with it. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. I'll see you in a few. And I have 2 interviews coming up tonight. One for Extinction Rebellion and the other one, I can't think of the gentleman's name. Guy. Oh, I can't think of his name. One is going to be at 5 o'clock. The other one is going to be at 8 o'clock. So it should be interesting. Both should be interesting. But I'll be back shortly. I have a few more. It's funny. I'm having trouble deciding on which videos to show. I need time to go through the stuff for Roger Stone. And so I may take a little bit of time to figure that out and come back afterwards. I mean, I followed the case. I just need to figure out what took place today. I just need to read up on that. So, all right, guys. I'll talk to you in a few. Thanks all.